Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Empowering Access and Insights Through Natural Language Processing, Unlocking Knowledge Across All Content Repositories. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. Next slide. This webinar is being recorded and a link to the recording will be sent out after the event. All attendees are in mute mode and will remain muted for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions, use the Q&A button on your screen. We'll answer questions at the end. If there are questions we are not able to get to, we will answer those via email after the webinar. I'd like to introduce our two presenters, Keith Parent, CEO and co-founder of CourtSquare Group, and Bryan Reynolds, CEO of Docxonomy. Keith, take it away.
Thanks, Roy. My name is Keith Parent. I am the CEO at CourtSquare. We are a content management. We are actually a managed service provider for life science cloud environments. We host applications all the way from preclinical through manufacturing. And we actually have a system called RegDocs 365, which is a regulated content management repository. The focus of this webinar is all around one of the issues that we had to deal with as a content repository. And we work with lots of different content repositories, particularly in a qualified and validated space, dealing with clinical trials and all the documents that lead up to doing submissions to the FDA. And our system, RegDocs 365, is a system that has both a TMF for the trial master file, as well as the EDM reference model for doing document submission work to the FDA or to other regulatory authorities. We've since created also a version called Life Science Basic, which is a starting point for many of our companies that are small or medium sized that have started out with Box or Dropbox or other repositories that are out there that aren't necessarily set up for the qualified and validated environment that they need to be in from a regulatory perspective. So what we wanted to do was create a system that was seamless all the way from the beginning to when you are submitting, and then you get approval for those applications. Recently, we had a request from one of our clients to look for a specific way of looking at documents. You can hit it now, Bryan. One of the requests that we had was, can we search for our documents in Japanese and find both English and Japanese documents, searching with either English or Japanese phrases, which was an interesting thing to think about because we are based on a search engine that's already part of our system. And that search engine, you can hit it again, Bryan. Our search engine actually is good and it does full text searching. It's got metadata, it's got keyword searching. It did a lot of the capabilities that we would need to look at documents. We've actually built in capabilities for OCRing documents. You know, some of the things that we worry about in our case is sometimes we'll get clinical documents that come in from clinical sites, and those things need to be OCR'd so we can actually go through it, and then we'll index them with the full text searching engines, all the different things that we had built into the RegDoc system. However, it didn't do some of the things that you would intuitively think, well, why can't it do that? Why can't we find it in a different language? Well, that means I got to translate things, or why can't I do it some other way to find that? And that's where some of the advanced AI techniques. So in thinking about how to do that, one of the things is I came across a company at one of our industry events, and I had known Bryan for years, and Bryan Reynolds from Docxonomy. I talked to him about the problem we were having. He says, oh yeah, we can do that. So we started talking a little bit about what they're doing, and he showed me everything they were doing, and across the board, and I said, well, let's talk. And hence we've got, hit it, Bryan. We found Docxonomy, and basically they have an advanced search capability that allows us within our own repository to do multi-language searching, which was fantastic because that helped solve the problem that we were looking for. But then he opened my eyes to all these other ways of using the capabilities of their AI-based searching mechanism to look at similarity searching and then video searching and then content across other different mediums. That was a better solution than what we had already built in. So now we've incorporated that as an advanced search capability within our regulated content management. And I think Bryan's going to go into a bunch of detail about how that works and what's the important part of that. The nice part about this is we deal with lots of other repositories. So when you think about a repository, ours is specifically created to hold either the Life Science Basic or the TMF or the EDM. Some of you out there may have a quality management system. You may have multiple other systems that actually have content stored in them. Well, the nice part is the solution that we've incorporated can actually use the capabilities to search other repositories to kind of tie this together. Bryan will go into a lot of details about that. Bryan, I'll turn it over to you now.
All right. Well, great, Keith. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do this with you. So just a little bit about myself. So my name is Bryan Reynolds. I am the CEO of Docxonomy. Docxonomy will get into more details about what it does and our relationship and partnership, very strategic partnership with Keith and Court Square, and in particularly the RegDocs 365 environment. So we've done some really nice integration, and we'll be demoing that and actually showing it to you firsthand so you can see it, how it works and what it does. But before we kind of dive into that, I wanted to give you a little history about myself. So I've been in this industry for quite some time, about 30 years now that I've been doing this. I have been working with unstructured data or content repositories, whether it be through document management or whether it be through enterprise searching and things of that nature for 3 decades. And I have a lot of knowledge about it. And one of the shortcomings we always saw was just there was a gap. There was something missing in the repositories and their ability to really understand content, right? Take text, if you will, and create context. So we're going to talk about that today. So I'm going to go through a few slides just to kind of frame it out so you understand what this is about and what this powerful capability in RegDocs 365 is that's now available. And then we'll get into the demo. So let's go ahead and kind of move forward here. First and foremost, I want to kind of frame out what Gartner talks about, right? So when you think about data science and natural language technologies, it's really sort of the coming together of AI and machine learning, all these buzzwords that you've been hearing about, and the marrying together of linguistics, language, right, text, if you will, and computer science. And where those sort of come together, you create this data science world, right? This natural language technology. It encompasses machine learning and natural language processing and speech recognition and computer vision and all these sort of aspects that are sort of encompassed in here. And what we're doing is we're using that capability, those technologies that are available to us to get far better than just, as Keith was talking about, keyword searches or full text searches for that matter, right? We're able to start looking at it more like a human would look at it. And so that's what we're going to look at here.
It's incredible, Bryan, as I've been going through the industry over all these years, we're so used to using things like Documentum and NextDocs and QMOS and all these different systems out there. And always searching is such a valuable capability for people to use. And we're always trying to figure out the best way to do that. And one of the biggest problems that we have is a lot of times we're migrating old data into repositories, things like that. One of the nice things I think I like about us talking about this is the ability to keep things in different repositories all at the same time. So when you get into that situation later on, I'd love to talk about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, next slide was just about that, right? Companies, organizations, big and small, it doesn't really matter, how big you are or how small you are. The bigger you are, the more you tend to have, right? But you have multiple repositories throughout the organization. RegDocs is one of them, but you also have probably Viva, and you have Box, you might have SharePoint, you might still be using Documentum, you have all these different places where this data lives. And it's very onerous and very hard. It takes, days, weeks, months, projects, a lot of effort to extract insight from these repositories that hold all this unstructured and structured data for that matter. Now, you have business processes that are running on those. And so it's really important that you don't want to just have to squash them or get rid of them or migrate data. That becomes also very expensive and time consuming and painful. So I think it's really important that you have a system, which is what we can offer here. And that's the ability to connect to multiple repositories and be able to pull an index in, a pointer, if you will, to those source repositories without affecting them in any way. and apply all this intelligence that you're going to see. So there's no need to have to migrate all the data into, any one particular repository. We can crawl across all of them. So we'll get into that and talk a little bit more about that, Keith, as we go forward, and we'll show that in the demo and how that works.
I think one of the big points on this particular screen that really kind of keyed off in my head when you started, we put this presentation together, was the fact that I could actually pull some information even out of things like SQL Server or MySQL. I know a lot of systems that are either purpose-built or whatever that have a database behind them, and nobody would ever think about going against those systems. It's not really documents,
Right.
It could be unstructured data that's stuck in a field somewhere. Historically, we deal with patient records, and there's lots of doctor's notes or things like that that are stuck in some fields that are in the database. So it's great to know that I can actually search across not only my documents, but if we have a tie into an EHR system or some other system that may have a SQL Server backend or a MySQL backend, I can actually pull data out of that as well, which is very intriguing to me.
We can connect to repositories like SAP. We can connect to Oracle, systems. Well, one of our largest implementations to date has just under 11 billion objects in it, and it was the culmination of 21 different systems. In this case, being integrated into a single view through this platform, and it was a mix of structured data, Oracle, and Docxonomy data. Unstructured PDFs and Word documents and things like that. And the fact that we could dynamically link those together based on the context, based on what's being written, not necessarily somebody mapping it like a human being, but automatically with the machines, was an enormous, time savings and real ROI for that particular customer. And yeah, you're exactly right.
I can't tell you how many migration projects we've done where the concept of having to map fields and map what this is here and there. And the other issue too is I know that as we deal with products, particularly along the drug development lifecycle, naming conventions for different drug products and things like that actually change depending on which department you're in within a company. So to have a tool that I could actually search and figure out, is this the same thing as this other piece? If in the preclinical area, it's not necessarily named the same thing as when it hits clinical, or when it gets approved and now it's it's an approved drug product. Now we're in the commercial space. Now it's got a commercial name on it. How can I find things across all those? I think you're going to give us an example of that later on, which would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, on my next slide here, we talk about the intelligence engine and what does it mean? From text to context, what does that actually mean? And so what you were talking about just now is similarity, right? Which is one of the components of the repository. But I'll walk us through this and explain it just at a high level, and then we'll dive into a demo right after this. So, when you think about the intelligence engine that's behind this, and now what is embedded and integrated into RegDocs 365, is a true natural language processing engine. So I like to explain it to people that it's a lot like reading a document with a highlighter in your hand, and you're highlighting the things that are in that document that are important, not metadata that was pre-entered by a human being, but actually what was written in the context of the document. You're bringing that out. So you're going from unstructured to structured. In the case of structured databases, like we were talking about earlier, you're pulling in that structure, but then you're marrying it together with unstructured data because you've extracted that insight, from that. And that's the natural language engine. It's a machine that reads like a human, that can analyze and understand and use very powerful models that are trained, in particular, in this case, for life science, right? Data. And extract what's important. But there's more to it, right? There's a vision engine, and that vision engine is all about looking at it like you would with your human eyes. Maybe you've got a picture, or maybe it's a video, a series of pictures, right, that you're looking at. Being able to extract what's in those images and pull those out and make them part of that intelligence like a human would. We can see things and process things that way. A classification engine, the ability to automatically sort it out. Is this a prescribing information guide? Is this a clinical protocol? It can sort that out without a human having to enter anything in. It can make those decisions for you with great accuracy. There's also a transcription engine built in, so we can take things like podcasts and video and audio, which are increasing at an exponential rate across all organizations. This type of media is becoming sort of the de facto way people want to communicate now. We can process that, interpret what's being said, pull it out, and then create context out of that automatically. We can also do similarity, which will allow me to look at words, look at phrases, and look at documents, all each individually, and determine changes that may have occurred over time, which we'll do a demo of that, right? We'll have this one of our demo items. And then it all sort of culminates in this idea of question and answer. And what is that? Well, everybody's been hearing about ChatGPT, right? So that's like on the news, it's almost every article I pick up and read. Well, we've had that built into our platform since 2019. So it's the ability to ask questions and have it respond back and generate answers for us based on our own data, but not from the public domain, based on the data that you hold behind your firewall. So it's very powerful in that aspect. So that's what this intelligence engine does. And that's what we've now integrated into RegDocs 365, not only for the content that's in RegDocs, but also it can be extended to pull content in from multiple other locations as well. So it can
Bryan,
all together.
Bryan, just as you're talking, it brought up two things to mind for me. When you were talking about the transcription and the similarity engine, one of the things I was thinking about was when you go into that commercial phase and you've got the promotional materials that are used for a lot of drug product, the ability to look at things in similarity between what's said maybe in a video or in some promotional materials that are in images out there, and be able to contrast that against some of the documents that you put together that are submitted about that, to look at the usage of the drug itself. I think those are areas that would be key areas to be able to look at from some of those aspects.
Exactly.
So I think that's great. The other thing I thought about was the fact that in our RegDoc system, we've got built in the concept of workflows and being able to do different things in metadata tagging. So we could actually, as we're looking through different sources of documents or data that's across multiple repositories, actually create lists of some of those documents or content where they could be. And then you could use some of the capabilities to export those into Excel or whatever you want to do for further processing later on down the line, without ever having to take things out of systems to be able to use them.
That's exactly right. Yep. You hit the nail right on the head. So that's exactly right. So you know what, we've talked about this in the slides. Let's kind of dive in and take a look at the platform and see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and switch my share screen here, and in this case we're going to point it right to RegDocs. Let's see, there it is. Just let me know, Keith, when you see that. That way, sure, I know that it pops up.
I see it now, Bryan. It's
okay.
It's there.
Great, awesome. All right. So we. The platform itself is very powerful, right? And the capabilities behind it are very powerful. And how it's been integrated into RegDocs 365 is very powerful. So we've set up a few different demo scenarios here so that we can show you the capabilities. We're not going to get all of it. We don't have enough time for that. But we're going to touch on some key ones that I think will be really important. So what you'll see here in the UI is you see the RegDocs 365 interface, and you'll see we've added in an advanced search capability here. So we're going to go ahead and click on that and open it up, and it's integrated in. So this is fully integrated into the platform, and it is very much like a Google search, right? So everybody is comfortable with that, understands that, knows how to use it. There's a lot of power behind and deeper into it, and we'll get into some of those aspects in the demo today. But we're going to just start off with searching against, in this case, RegDocs 365. So the content that we're crawling is in this repository, and we're going to interact with it. So I'm going to just start real simple off with a search for kind of a keyword type search, or just a search you would do in a Google search on enlarged prostate gland. Okay, so I just want to search on that and say, okay, what do I have? I'm not picking sources. I'm searching against all of the various different content that I have in the system, and I'll go ahead and execute that search. So what we're going to get back here is a results screen, as you can see here. And there's some things that are on here that are important that I want to point out. So all this content lives within the RegDocs 365 interface. However, this content could live in other repositories and it could come still through this same interface. So you could have Documentum content coming back here. You could have SharePoint, other SharePoint content coming back. You could have Viva content coming back here. I mean, we have connectors or what we call crawlers, if you will, that will connect into these different repositories and they can crawl that content. You'll see here that it comes back very simple. It's pretty easy to understand. Each row is a piece of content that we found. You'll see the snippets that we found that were most relevant within the context of the content for what we were searching on, the keywords that we were searching on in this case. So we'll see those come back, and you'll see the highlighting within that area where we're automatically highlighting those particular values that we found and the relevancy in context with the words that are there. It's all about natural language. So it's all about reading and understanding and interpreting what's really there. You'll also notice on the right-hand side here, some really powerful component we called aggregations. They're aggregators, or facets is another word for them, but we call them aggregators. These have all been built out dynamically, right? So no human had to go in and enter information. So for instance, if we wanted to say, click open and look at side effects, this is all of the side effects mentioned in this case, 74 results that we got back. And you can toggle through this, you can search on them. So you could say like headache, right? There's 44, instances of that across the 74 where headache is mentioned as a side effect. And this was all automatically extracted from the content without a human having to enter in any meta information.
One of the things that, Bryan, I want to point out to people looking at the demo right now, think about all of you out there that have these legacy systems that have old drug product that nobody really gets into them anymore. And if you ever want to do this kind of searching, if you ever put a connector into there, typically most companies will have those as read-only, and they only go in there for reference purposes. Imagine if you could actually crawl those and have those tied in with what you're doing now. Imagine what kind of data you have locked into your own information already.
Yep, that's exactly right. So for our demo purposes, let's go ahead and focus in on classes. So as we talked about, we auto-classify content. We sort it out. So we've got a bunch of different kinds of documents that we've collected from the public domain here. And let's say in this case, we're just looking for prescribing, well, if I could spell, prescribing information guides. So we can go ahead and apply that filter, and we can very quickly take our 73, I think we had, results, or 72 results, and we're back now to 4 results that are prescribing information guides. And that's based on the classification that was automatically applied to the content. Now, if you already have them pre-classified in a system like Documentum, we can ingest that as well. There's nothing stopping the system from doing that. But we also automatically do that no matter what, right? Whatever content comes in. Let's go ahead and go into one of these and take a look at what does it look like from our world. While we're not looking at the source content right now, the actual source still lives in RegDocs 365. In fact, if we wanted to, we can click this link right here and I'll open the PDF directly out of the repository. So this is the source content that we crawled here, okay? So it's still there. But what we have here is an index and an HTML view of that content. And when we crawl it and we analyze it, we start looking at and discovering things like the intelligence. That's what we call intelligence. So the provided metadata and the file metadata, that's all there. So, date created, all that kind of stuff, that's still there. Anything that came from the source system would be there. But we also start finding things inside of it, like side effects that may occur from taking this particular drug. We might find, pharmaceutical names and inactive ingredients and things like that. This is stuff that gets pulled out automatically from the content of the document. You'll also notice that over here is what we call a child. It's a relationship. We go deep into content when we index it. we open up this particular child, you'll see it was an image that was embedded in the PDF in this case. And you'll see that we automatically OCR everything that's in there, and that becomes part of the search index. So if you have something that happens to be on an image that's embedded, it's still going to get picked up when you're looking for it. It's still going to get analyzed, even though it's actually an image. So we do that deep level type of analysis of all the content that we call, and we'll look at that a little bit more in a little bit. Let's also take a look at this one here. This is another example, another document here. And what I want to focus on here is I want to actually look at in this section here, this purpose of the nasal decongestant. I want to show similarity searching. So let's take this. We're going to highlight that right here in the viewer. Temporarily relieves nasal congestion. Okay, I want to find everywhere across all of these documents. Okay, I'm not looking for a specific document. I'm not doing a keyword phrase. I'm looking for where this phrase has been used, and it may or may not be exactly the same. It'll score it, but we're going to go ahead and execute that search. So you'll see we quickly get back results here, and what we're seeing here is a similarity score. So while that phrase is not exactly the same, it's still very similar contextually. And so we can bring back other recommended content here that is using that same type of language. And we can do that across all types of content types, whether it's audio, video, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF documents, things like that. So that's a very powerful aspect. And you talked about that, Keith, around similarity.
No, I think that's fantastic. I love seeing that, Bryan.
So let's go ahead and jump out of sort of our similarity search here, and let's kind of drop back into a slightly different kind of search. So let's just go back to the main search. And by all means, there's multiple ways that you can go about searching. We've done very simple searching here. We'll probably do that for the video, but there is the ability to do advanced searching. So you can go in and you can build search scenarios against your content. So like, where countries, is, equals or contains, and you can do ands and ors. So we can get quite elaborate in the type of search that you create. You can also save these searches so they can be re-executed without having to go and refill them out every single time. So a lot of those capabilities are all there. But let's go ahead and drop back in and let's do a search for low blood sugar. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and execute that as a video search. So why are we doing this? Well, I want to show kind of the depth in which we crawl content. So a video happened to be sitting out there in this repository. We crawled that video and we analyzed that video. So I'm going to focus in on the Farxiga one here. So I'm going to click that open. And what you're going to see here is within this video, we've picked up that low blood sugar is mentioned in context of the video. And if we want to jump to that section, we can do that just by clicking right here.
Low blood sugar and sudden kidney problems. Stop taking first.
So basically what you can see there is we've jumped, 47 seconds into this video where we actually identified, what we were searching for. In this case, it was low blood sugar. So you can see that we analyze the video, we take everything that's being said in the video, transcribe that, and we can do that with multiple languages. And we're going to look at language in just a second. And then we apply that same natural language processing to it. So again, very deep in the way that we analyze it. You'll also notice on the embedded side over here for the children, we analyze all of these images inside of a video. A video is nothing more than a bunch of pictures put in a time frame. So, and we make predictions on what's in there. So I'm going to drop back out to the search. And in this case, I'm not going to do a search. I'm going to do an image search. But in this case, I'm going to look for baseball. And the reason I do that is because I'm saying, okay, I've got this video. I remember, I don't remember which drug it was, but I remember that it was a commercial. It happened to be, it was a promotional marketing material, happened to be with, they were playing baseball. That's all I can remember. Fine. So I do that image search. And what you'll see here is we very quickly get back a bunch of images having to do with somebody playing baseball. And I can open up any one of those. So I'll open this one for now. And you'll see here that, clearly the scene of baseball is being played. And you'll notice down here in our relevance tags that we've tagged this, okay, and they're all predictions, right? So it's, 92% and so forth, 99% in our accuracy of what's going on here. But that becomes part of the search. But we also, if you look at this image here, it has text in it. We analyzed that image and we extracted the text directly out of that image as well. That becomes part of the search. And we can see here that if we jump back to its parent, it puts us back into that video. So that's the depth in which we analyze content. And then we have the source pointer, like you saw before, that points us back to the original content. So that's the video searching.
What's really cool is you can actually even see that it has similar documents up there as well. So even in the middle of a search like this, you can actually even find other documents that are similar.
Absolutely. Based on the context of what was being said in this video, we're making recommendations here that these other videos are similar, but there's also content, documents themselves that are out there, or segments that are also similar contextually of what's being said in that video. And those recommendations are being made automatically for you. You don't have to, it doesn't require any effort. So let's jump back in our time, in lieu of time, and I want to hit one more area. We talked about it earlier, and that was your original case where you got the question about searching in multiple languages and dealing with Japanese and English in particular. And you mentioned that earlier. So let's take a look at what does that look like for us. So in this case, I'm going to limit it to a source. Okay, so you can have multiple sources. You can either search across the entire repository, or you can narrow it down to what you want. So I'm going to focus in on our translation source because we've loaded some content for this so that we can see that. And I'm searching for a particular report. So in this case, I'm searching for Keytruda review report. All right. And so I'm going to go ahead and execute that search. And so what we get back here is a bunch of results with the most relevant results coming back because of what I was searching on, which shows I've got 3 different documents right here at the top, right? I've got my Keytruda report and we labeled it for demo purposes in English, but I also have a Japanese version of it. And I'm going to go ahead and focus in on this one and open it up. And what you're going to see here is this document has automatically been transcribed into English on the fly, but you'll see that its predicted language was Japanese. And in fact, if we open up that original document, we'll see this is what we processed. Okay, this is the actual Japanese document that we processed. And you'll see that, it's the whole thing for the most part is written, exclusively in Japanese.
That's outstanding.
But we've translated that into English. Now, what's also powerful is if we were doing that same search, and I'm just going to drop back to the search, and let's say we wanted to search for that document, but we wanted to search for it in Japanese. So our interface supports that. So this is Japanese characters for similar, basically the same search. And I can execute that. We translate what is being queried in the language that it's being queried, and then execute that search. So again, you'll see we get back a series of documents where what we were searching on comes back, and we get back to our original document here, the USPI in English. So we picked it up based on that search. The final thing that I wanted to show, and actually I'm going to go back to this one. And actually, wait, go back over here and limit it to here. Otherwise, we're going to pick up a lot of extra things that will also be in there. there we go, to our Japanese one. If I wanted to, and I already have it here, I could pin that to my files, which would show up here, and then I could go back to it by clicking on my files. And anything that is important to me that I want to keep is, for me to quickly get back to can be here. So again, we see it right here is another way of getting at your content. You can also tag it. We'll do that in another demo. But let's say I want to translate this into Spanish. So I could choose Spanish on the fly, hit view, and immediately translate that document into Spanish and be able to read it in Spanish. So with that, that kind of concludes some of the things we wanted to show you. Obviously, there are a whole lot more, that's here and capabilities for many use cases. About any use case you can come up with, I'm sure that we can work on solving that. But I would like to see if there are any open questions and kind of open this up, at least through the chat window. Otherwise, it'll get a little chaotic. So I'm going to go ahead and drop back out of here. Back onto my presentation. There we go. And we can move that forward and open it up to any questions.
So Brian, one of the quick questions that I had in looking at the demo was specifically across both images and videos. So you guys will actually take and transcribe both the language itself that's on the video, as well as any text that's going to show up in that video, and it'll be in the same search, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it becomes part of what we call it the index. But yeah, what becomes part of what is that, if you will, file. Instead, can't call them documents as much because it's a video, right?
Right.
But in that file, the context of it, so it's not only like the basic metadata properties, like its size and its name and that kind of stuff, which everybody can get. It's actually what was said in the video, and then any image that maybe had text on it, we automatically OCR and extract that text. All of it gets built together into a single index, and it becomes searchable.
I think there was an important point that you made earlier, and you were talking about ChatGPT and context within your own firewall. I think the important part here for everybody on the webinar to realize is that all of this data is internal to your own systems, and we have this inside of your repository. So it's whatever we set up connectors to is what you're going to search, and we will maintain as part of those connectors whatever security mechanisms you already have built into those systems. So
yep,
I think that's an important point that people realize, because they want to say, well, can I just search everything across the board? Part of it's going to be what you're allowed to search. So it all depends on who you are and what ability you have across some of those same repositories. So I think that's a big part of what we have to make sure people understand as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And basically we adhere to the security that is applied. We apply it at the connector level. So if you're connecting right to a documentum, if you don't have access to see that, you're not going to have access to see it in the search index either. So it's not like all of a sudden everything's open to the whole world. I also see some questions that have come in too on the chat. So the first one, I'll take the first one from the top. It says, curious for professional services firms, we have similar challenges, obviously not nearly as regulated. Can you also integrate from CRMs like HubSpot or even email attachments? Yes. The answer to that is yes. We can crawl email repositories. We can connect to HubSpot. We have native connectors that we've built to most of the major content repositories that we work with, so you can Documentums, Vivas, and so forth. But we also have a connector to a third-party connector, a company that does just third-party connectors, which extends us to about another 300 different systems. And so through that, we can get to HubSpot. Email, we have native, and we can connect and crawl email repositories. And then email repositories are really powerful because, yeah, we crawl not only the mail and the message itself and the metadata associated to that message, but the actual attachments, and they get that same deep level crawl. So now when you're searching your mail repository and you're looking for something, but it's something that's embedded inside the attachment, you can actually find it and we can link you back to that email. Or you can, view it in the context within our viewer. It's up to you on how you configure that.
And I think that's important, Brian, because I think there was some of the in the regulated industry, one of the things that we deal with a lot is correspondence coming back from regulatory authorities, asking questions, doing different things. So the ability to go back through your emails and to go back through the responses, either for this particular drug or for another drug, being able to find similar responses or things like that is a huge benefit. I know that we actually put on our website, we've actually got a little demo that talks a lot about how you can use email and strategically use the searching capabilities to identify different email strands and conversations with regulatory authorities and being able to pull those together. So I think that was a great opportunity to use the tool and maybe ways people hadn't thought about when you first look at this. I've myself, as we're going through it and I see the power of the tool, have thought about more and more ways of being able to use that as part of our operations.
Right. That's exactly right. In fact, I think we have a demo, agency related in particular for like FDA, for example, like I get a question, I know I've responded to this before, and finding the response in a matter of a couple of clicks to be able to, use that to craft your next response, right? And be through similarity searching, just like you just said, you're able to do that once it's been indexed. That's the key, is the indexing part. You have to apply this intelligence first, and then once it's there, you can use it for so many different use cases. There's another question that came in also. Let's see, it's a great presentation. Could you explain the translation part from Japanese into Spanish? Did the system look for a Spanish word, Spanish report, or did it translate? If latter is the case, how is this validated? Okay, that's a good question. So I'll answer that one live too. So basically, translation is done there's one of three ways, I'll say. It's three different sort of approaches to it, right? There's two that just what you saw. One is that we have our own translation engine that is built in. It's a deep neural net model that will do the translation. It's a true translation. Is it validated? That part? No, that's not. We wouldn't consider that being a validated process. However, we also understand that you use companies, third-party companies that do true translations. Our system is capable of ingesting those and will map those back. And so if you do have a translation that has been a validated translation, we'll serve that translation for that piece of content. When you see the translating occurring right now, kind of on the fly, it is on the fly, and it's for ease of use and ease of understanding, not so much for what you would want to submit, if you will.
And Brian, we talk to our customers about the fact that it's not a certified translation, and if they need a certified translation, there are companies that will actually do that. But in conjunction with that, they can actually work with that and use this as a starting point for some of that as well. So I think that's a big part of that.
Correct. Absolutely. It's a good starting point. And then the last one there that we do have is we also can, and it's built into the platform. We added this a while back, is integration. If you want to use like Google Translate, we have the mechanism to plug that into the back end, and we'll go out and use Google to do the translation if you want. Our model is very strong. It's very powerful. It handles all of your most standard languages. So all your Latin languages, as well as some of your double bytes like Chinese, Japanese, it can do those really well. If you need to extend that beyond to Google, I don't know how many. Google's up to about 104 different languages now. You can leverage Google, but like you said, it's a good starting point. And of course, we can ingest and serve up those regulated translations as part of the system as well. That capability is there.
It's interesting in talking about the different languages, it actually brought back to mind a question I had asked you a little bit earlier, was when I think about search and the early search that we used to use, I thought we were doing great by doing full text searching and indexing all the content within a document. And the concept of doing full text search versus the kind of searching that you guys are doing. Can you just kind of talk about that to the audience a little bit? Because I think that's an important point to make, particularly the way you've implemented it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about, full text, it is just that, right? It's full text. And if you're doing a query for a full text type query, which again, I've been doing this for a long time, right? It still was very powerful. I could start to search for things, phrases, and so forth, but they were much more exact matches, right? They're not going to that next level of interpreting and coming up with multiple different variations, if you will, of what that search means, and then executing it that way, right? So if you think about it, as we're standing in the middle between the way we used to do things to a way now that is much more like you would expect from a human. But the similarity indexing, the fact that we crawl and look and analyze every single word, we understand phrases of words like linked together sentences. We understand linguistically, how those come together, right? The index is taking those things into account. What's a noun? What's an adverb? What's a verb, right? And how do those relate with each other? All of that is occurring as we're processing and building this index. So as we crawl the content, it's being fed in, and we're looking at it, and all of that is happening. When you think of a full text search, they don't do that, right? It's just text. Here it is. It goes into an index, and you can search across that text. But now you can start, with this type of search, going to a completely different level, asking it questions and interacting with it more like a human being, like a bot, if you will.
That's great. Well, with that being said, guys, I think we've come to the end of our questions. I don't know, Bryan, was there anything more that we wanted to talk about as part of the?
I don't think so. I think that we'll make this demo available online for everybody that attended, and there are obviously some that things come up weren't able to attend. You can share that. If you have questions, there's, you can reach out to Keith and find out whatever your use cases may be. We'd happy to sit down and talk to you about them. There's obviously a lot more depth to what we have here integrated with RegDocs 365. We'd love to share more with you and talk more about that with you.
Fantastic. And Roy, did you want to follow up with any words? We're going to hang this off of our website, correct? Or off our YouTube channel?
This will be on our YouTube channel, and we'll post a link on social media and on our website.
That sounds fantastic.
Awesome.
Well,
I'd like
really
to thank
wanna
you both.
thank
It was a fantastic presentation. I enjoyed it, and I found it interactive and very informative. Thank you very much.